It's all going well. Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins are well on their way to the moon, where two of them will park, climb out, and take a stroll, picking up a few rocks and souvenirs to bring back to Earth. The three flyers have been reserved all day, confining themselves entirely to technical exchanges with the ground. No chatter, no jokes, almost as if this were a routine trip they take every day. At one point, Collins looked out of his window at the Earth 35,000 miles below him and said to the ground, "I don't know exactly what I was looking at, but it was a nice view." They'll reach the moon Sunday, and the walk on the moon is scheduled for early Monday morning Eastern Time, which means most Americans will be up half the night. Perhaps with that in mind, President Nixon proclaimed Monday a national day of participation, and he asked that all Americans be given the day off. The federal government will close down on Monday, but Nixon's proclamation is not binding on anyone else. Well, down here at Cape Kennedy, the day began early, and in fact, it began yesterday, when the beaches and other spaces in sight of the launching pad began filling up with people camping and sleeping outdoors. After the launch, there was a traffic jam for...
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Set 8 miles downrange, 12 miles high. Velocity 4,000 feet per second.
Stand by for mode 1 Charlie. Mark, mode 1 Charlie. 1 Charlie.
Cliff Charlesworth taking a staging status.
This is Houston, you are go for staging. Inboard cutoff.
Inboard engines out.
I'm inboard cutoff.
Downrange 35 miles, 30 miles high. Standing by for the outboard engine cut down now.
Staging. And ignition. Moving Houston, thrust is go. All engines, you're looking good. Roger, you're loud and clear, Houston.
At 3 minutes, downrange 70 miles.
After the launch, there was a traffic jam for 10 miles in all directions. The Soviet Union had some praise for the astronauts and gave the news rapidly to its people. But there was no further news about the Russian spacecraft approaching the moon. There is still no firm information on what their Luna 15 is supposed to do. Presumably, as in the past, after it has done whatever it is going to do, the Russians then will announce what it did.
The Huntley Brinkley Report is produced by NBC News and brought to you in color by Star-Kissed. Only the best tasting tuna get to be Star-Kissed. Tell them Charlie sent you.
What's that, Charlie?
A statue I'm sending to Star-Kissed to show my good taste.
How's that?
Well, because they know that only guys with very good taste can stand to be around this junk.
Star-Kissed ain't looking for tunas with good taste. They want tunas that taste good.
Nah.
Sorry, Charlie, but only the best tasting tuna get to be Star-Kissed. The firm, fresh tuna. That's why
it is the best tasting tuna.
ask for Star-Kissed.
Tell them Charlie sent you.
Men do marvelous things to wood with Black & Decker power tools. Circular saws cut through and stop instantly. Low-profile belt sanders smooth surfaces fast. New Black & Decker routers shape an edge, create designs, make perfect dovetail joints, even cut out a sink top with speed and precision. Beautiful work in wood is so much easier when you put Black & Decker power to work. And every woodworking tool Black & Decker makes for industry has a counterpart for the home. This circular saw is only $27.77. Men who work with power tools know, for the professional touch in wood, you can expect the best from Black & Decker.
The Nixon administration does not want wage and price controls as a way of controlling inflation, and today it went out of its way to say so. The president's press secretary said that such controls are out in the foreseeable future. The president thinks there are other ways to cool the economy, and one way he wants to do that is to get the income tax surcharge passed. Right now, he considers that the single most important piece of business at hand is that, and today he put on the pressure. A report from NBC News correspondent Douglas Kiker.
In a spirited exchange on the Senate floor today, Republican leader Everett Dirksen told Democratic leaders Mike Mansfield and Edward Kennedy that an extension of the surtax must be passed without a day's delay, even if it is necessary to interrupt debate on the ABM. Mansfield and Kennedy listened to Dirksen's argument but were unmoved. Mansfield said Democrats still insist that tax reform be linked to surtax extension. That takes time, so he said the surtax vote cannot come until September at the earliest. Kennedy told Dirksen that outraged taxpayers are demanding tax reform, and he said now's the time to get it. Dirksen told him the Democrats are playing with economic dynamite. While all this was going on in the Senate, Treasury Secretary David Kennedy was meeting with 25 of the nation's biggest bankers talking about inflation. Afterwards, Kennedy said he believes the Senate will act responsibly and pass the surtax extension before its summer recess.
I think it would be very bad to have the surtax in doubt or questioned beyond the recess or into the recess. I think the psychological effect is bad, even if there were some feeling that it would be passed. But until legislation actually takes place, there's always uncertainty as to whether you're going to get the increase or whether you're not going to get it. It would be unthinkable for me to have the surcharge being continued in doubt for several months here. We get the worst of all worlds in that. Senator Mansfield, of course, will have the decision of when to bring the bill to the floor once it's through the committee. And I believe that a number of people have talked to the senator, or the president has talked to him, and I'm sure he'll act responsibly when the bill comes out of the committee.
Kennedy also said his talk with the bankers convinced him that interest rates will not go higher. But he said the key to the whole thing is still the surtax. And even though the White House, once again today, firmly ruled out wage and price controls as a means of combating inflation, Kennedy said he's not closing the door on any possibilities. Douglas Kiker, NBC News, Washington.
The Senate Foreign Relations Committee held a hearing today on a resolution proposed by Senator Brooke that the Soviet Union and the United States stop testing nuclear missiles with multiple warheads. Brooke got into a discussion with Dr. Herbert York, a physicist and a scientific advisor to President Eisenhower, on whether continued testing could be considered a provocation of the Russians. Senator Fulbright also got into the discussion.
I believe that the great difficulty in the prospective deployment of MIRV technology is that it is a de facto multiplication of offensive capability, and that it's highly provocative, and that it would complicate the arms negotiations, arms talks, and that it would be a threat to mutual deterrence. Would you agree with that?
I would have said almost the same thing, but with a different word. Instead of saying provoke, I would have said stimulate, because the arms race is a set of reactions of one side's technicians and planners to what the other side does. In other words, when they started talking about an ABM, they didn't provoke us into developing a MIRV. Our technical people took it as a challenge.
More technical than political or military?
It's political too, but the arms race has a kind of an independent existence from just the politics of it.
On that last point, I've often thought that they react sort of like a mountain climber does to a big mountain. He just got to climb it. Nobody understands why. He doesn't want anything up there, but he's just a challenge. And much of our research is that way, isn't it? In the Defense Department, you've been over there. Has no relation to anything military. Many of the projects that are sponsored by the Pentagon have no possible relation to their mission, but they've got the money, and it's a challenge to look into this or that or anything else.
The human body, gifted with infinite possibilities of variation. It's hard to believe that this basic structure can fit itself into shapes so unique, so unlike. In short, we're all put together differently, but ordinary mattresses are all built the same, and they treat people as if they were too. There's one mattress, though, that's different. The Beauty Rest. It's made of separate, individually pocketed coils, so that it can give each part of your body the firm, individual support it needs, no matter how that part happens to be shaped. The Beauty Rest, made for every body, and made only by Simmons, with this in mind, that the human body is a perfect idea, but that no human body is perfect.
The Huntley-Brinkley Report continues, brought to you by Adolph's Instant Meat Tenderizer. Makes meat juicy, tender, flavorful. Every time. Adolph's never fails.
Funny, when you're having people over for dinner, how you think of the dinners that didn't turn out. Like the time Gladys Campbell had the nerve to ask you where you bought your meat. You learn that when the meat's tough, the meal's a flop. So now you use Adolph's Instant Meat Tenderizer to make sure the meat's tender. Adolph's never fails.
Troops from San Salvador pushed deeper into Honduras today, headed for Tegucigalpa, the capital. The Salvadorian government paid no attention, for the time being at any rate, to Honduras's conditional acceptance of a ceasefire proposed by the Organization of American States. In the Middle East, there was more fighting. Israeli raiders crossed into Lebanon and blew up several houses. There were exchanges of fire south of the Sea of Galilee and across the Suez Canal. These exchanges and raids are now a daily part of Israeli life, and the country is prepared for anything. NBC News correspondent David Burrington reports.
In spite of all the border turmoil, Israeli intelligence officers do not expect all-out war this summer unless the Arab nations get reckless. And that's the main worry here, that Arab frustration will suddenly explode. And it's why half of this tiny nation is now in uniform. There's no general mobilization so far, but the reserves, which includes practically everybody, men and women, are spending more than the usual month on active duty. This has bolstered the size of the armed forces. There's obvious tension in Israel. The latest border incident is almost the only topic of conversation. In Tel Aviv, late edition newspapers are often sold out in spite of increased press runs. There's much concern about the increase in casualties. The daily list of dead and wounded is widely read and worried about. The tension also surfaces every hour when the latest news is broadcast. Nearly everyone listens, and not only for the news. If general mobilization should come, those units that are needed will be notified by secret code words in the newscast, and that will be the only notice. Whatever the tension, morale is high, and most people do not expect war.
I don't really think so, because the Arabs, as far as I know, I myself come from a Syrian father. I understand the mentality out of people. I think that they're all bluff and all talk. The only way to do, if they should come, we'll hit them harder and they'll never rise again.
Do you think there will be another war?
I hope not, because this country is just great. They have been doing so many things, and they've really improved, and the people are so willing to help the country that I hope we don't have to fight anymore, that there will be peace in the future.
In spite of the optimism, all new buildings in Tel Aviv must now have air raid shelters strong enough to protect against nuclear as well as conventional bombs. Schools are getting shelters, and children are constantly drilled on air raid procedures. So Israel isn't taking any chances, but so far it feels that its own strategy is working, aggressive counterattacks, especially in the air, to prove that its own forces are superior. Officers here say that this, more than anything else, will serve to discourage an all-out Arab attack. David Burrington, NBC News, Tel Aviv, Israel.
The White House is making final preparations for President Nixon's trip to Asia and to communist Romania. There appears to be little reason to expect anything concrete to come out of the president's first trip to a communist country. But Romania is quite unlike other Soviet satellites in Eastern Europe. Here is a report from NBC News correspondent George Montgomery.
As communist countries go, Romania is a bright spot, and not without long-term promise for Richard Nixon's diplomacy. But one big thing about Romania is that nobody stirs things up, except the operator of the government-approved wave-making machine at Bucharest's showcase Lido Hotel. Having substantial natural wealth and wanting more gives the nationalistic Romanians both the desire for independence and the strength to work for it. Thanks to the policy of drawing on both East and West for development, Romania now has an industrial growth rate of about 12% a year, second only to Japan's. But Romania needs more hard Western currency to carry out industrialization projects like the Galat steel manufacturing complex. So Romania may ask Mr. Nixon for a better chance to sell her products in the United States in order to earn more dollars. With Russia right on his border, President and party chief Ceausescu rules firmly, preventing his nation of 19 million people from moving too fast toward either internal freedom or too much open friendliness with the West. This tough little man coolly accepts the popularity, the welcoming wine, bread, and salt. But his tight, centralized, well-policed control helps keep the people in line, helps keep the urge for freedom within bounds, and so far helps keep Nicolae Ceausescu from going the way of Czechoslovakia's Alexander Dubček. West Europeans who soak up the sun at the Black Sea resorts find there has been some internal loosening up. Today, Romanians aren't half so scared of conversations, even mildly anti-communist conversations, with foreigners. The government is more sure of itself because it has played on the people's nationalism, as symbolized at a resort nightclub decked out in classic Roman style. The Romanians regard themselves as direct descendants of their ancient Roman conquerors. And as shrewd, fun-loving, fast-moving Latins surrounded by dull, dour Slavs. started developing late. Her standard of living still lags behind most Soviet bloc nations. The Romanians are very pleased Mr. Nixon is coming. But what they really want is a better life, materially. And quite a few of them wouldn't even mind a little more internal freedom, provided their own government, or Mother Russia, doesn't slap them down. George Montgomery, NBC News, in the Romanian village of Nicolae Balșescu.
Debbie, we're going on vacation. Why do you look so sad?
I found out I have iron-poor blood.
Well, if you have iron-poor blood, don't be sad. Be glad for Geritol. Geritol iron enters your bloodstream fast, carrying its high-potency iron throughout your whole body. Just 2 Geritol tablets contain twice the iron in a pound of calf's liver, plus 7 vitamins for nutrition.
It's good to see you smile again.
Well, thanks to the Geritol I've been taking.
Check with your doctor, and if iron-poor blood is your problem, don't be sad. Be glad for Geritol. Geritol builds high-potency iron in your blood. Try it.
Quick shave. Time to open up. Take a minute. Electric razor? And Rain's electric shave. Makes my whiskers stand up. Lubricates my face. A shave that feels barber close. Barber close? It does. Everybody should look for the big L. First letter and... Blabbermouth.
Philip Roth's best-selling novel, Portnoy's Complaint, has been read and argued across the country. It's the story of a New York man who traces his inhibitions and frustrations to a domineering mother. Some say the book is obscene. Most say it isn't. In Memphis, Tennessee, the public library bought 2 copies of Portnoy's Complaint. The mayor objected, and today he asked the library board to consider removing the book from the shelves. Librarians said that would be censorship. Here is a report from NBC News correspondent Fred Briggs at station WMC-TV, Memphis.
Portnoy's Complaint was on trial today before the Memphis Library Board. The charge was obscenity, and the prosecutor was Mayor Henry Loeb.
I question the use of tax dollars for a book of this type when there's so many books that are so productive that I've been told through the budget that we don't have the funds to buy. Secondly, the question of this august library, which I was brought up to respect, putting some form or stamp of approval on the book by having it, which is the library board's business. Now, if I might, I would like to answer several ladies in here with regret. Please step outside for a minute, because I want to read you some passages in this book. I don't think you know what's in this book. Would you mind doing that, please?
The ladies, a city councilwoman, and 2 reporters left. Then the mayor read a few lurid passages to the board. He asked that no sound be recorded while he read, and it wasn't. Then the librarian who bought the book said the mayor was reading them out of context, making the book sound like newsstand pornography.
This book is different from the trash on newsstands. It does belong in the mainstream of contemporary American literature. It is an important contemporary novel. I have all sorts of reviews that praise it to the skies. I have tried in other libraries to set up criteria for selection that would maybe rule out this book, and then you find you ruled out a very important book that everybody wanted because you hit upon something that was objectionable to you personally. Why not leave the library free and let people who don't want to read these books not read them?
The board put off a decision, but most members seem to want the book restricted, if not withdrawn. It's brought great joy to booksellers. Until this week, Portnoy's Complaint was not the bestseller here. It is elsewhere. It will be now. Fred Briggs, NBC News in Memphis.
General Earl Wheeler, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, arrived in Saigon today and began talks with General Abrams, the American military commander, about the significance of the lull in the war. The Army said today it will suspend open-air tests of poison gases at Fort McClellan, Alabama, but that testing will continue at Dugway, Utah. Prince Juan Carlos reportedly will be named successor to Spanish Chief of State Franco next week when Franco addresses a special session of Parliament. William Battle defeated State Senator Henry Howell in yesterday's Virginia Democratic gubernatorial primary, but failed to get a majority. Under state law, Howell can ask for a runoff election. The Federal Reserve Board said today industrial production rose 0.7% in June. It's now 5% higher than a year ago. And prices rose today on the New York Stock Exchange, the biggest advance since April. The Dow Jones Industrials gained more than 8 points, and the value of an average share of common stock increased 46 cents. David?
In the year 1492, the town of Palos in Spain was slow, sleepy, and quiet. In 1969, it's the same way. Something did happen there once, but very little has happened since, and now it looks very much the same as it did then. It's a minor river port on the Rio Tinto, Tinted River, near the sea in southwestern Spain. There are vineyards producing a little hot Spanish wine, some fig trees, a convent unchanged since 1492, and about 6,000 people. An Italian sea captain, after some haggling with the Queen of Spain, she was then short of money, assembled 3 leaky boats and a cantankerous, ill-tempered crew, and an order from the Queen to sail to the west looking for the Indies. Washington Irving visited Palos centuries later and wrote, quote, "When people heard the order, nothing could equal their astonishment and horror when they heard the nature of the expedition on which they were ordered to engage." Well, he sailed before dawn on August 3rd, and there is no record that any big crowds turned out to watch, since no one, including him, knew where he was going, and probably very few thought he would ever get there. If the people of Palos greeted Columbus's trip with astonishment and horror, the people of Cape Kennedy, Cocoa Beach, Cape Canaveral, and the rest of it down here greeted the Apollo flight to the moon with the utmost in American boosterism, enthusiasm, and zeal. They not only were not horrified at the modern equivalent of an order from Queen Isabella, they were delighted, and they wanted more orders like it. Cocoa Beach in the early days of the space program had a raucous beginning, not unlike a western frontier town suddenly discovering gold. But lately it has tried very hard to pull up its socks and become what it believes is the model for an American small town: respectability, sobriety, and prosperity. But the visitors on occasions like this are not all so hot for respectability and sobriety, and so there is some carousing. And unlike Palos, everybody who could turned out to see Columbus sail. Good night, Chet.
Good night, David, and good night for NBC News.